hey, let's do some Photoshop. And maybe even better than that, let's focus on an area that drives everyone nuts. Let's give 5 tips on how to improve your masking abilities and how to just get good at cutting stuff out.
Movie boy! Dun, dun, dun.
So, number 1, assistance layers. So, what do I mean by an assistance layer? Let's find out. We have here photos of Jenna Fischer, best known from The Office. These photos are from the 15 to 17 to Paris premiere. Say that 10 times fast. And let's just start with this one here. We have Jenna here. I've duplicated the background so that I'm working non-destructively. If anything goes wrong with this layer, I still have the original layer underneath. So the point here is, say we've made a selection. Now, I did this with the quick selection tool, but you could do it with lasso or anything else. But you've got a selection here, and you can see the marching ants showing what we've got of her. Now, Photoshop really wants you to work in the selected mask palette these days. And you can bring that up by going under the select, going down here, or you can hit Command Option R. So we're in the pop-up window for selection and mask. And I gotta admit, this is still a little unwieldy. It's a little problematic. It just doesn't work as well as some of the old refined mask pop-up windows used to, and I'll show you how to get back to those even in newer versions of Photoshop in just a moment. But first, so we see our very rough selection right here, and right now it's set to against an onion skin. Now, to help assist making sure how you're getting your layers, you can set her against white and against black, but the moment you hit OK, like this, you're kind of stuck again. And inevitably, whether you're using the old refined mask tool or you're using the new selected mask, you're going to have to get to an area where you're just going to need to refine it further. So for many years, what I do is build my own version of what you see inside of that panel, just so we can have a mask to work with here, even a very rough one. Let's go down here and make our layer mask. The transparent checkers, they just don't help when you're really drilling in. So what I like to do is, behind the layer I'm masking out, is I make a new layer. And then I happen to have white being my foreground color anyway. So if you hold down the Option and Delete key, you've now filled with your foreground color. Then on top of that, I wish to do further help by putting a black layer. So if I, in this case, black being my background color, if I hit Command or Control Delete being on the PC, I now have a black layer. Now, this doesn't look like it's going to help much until you put your cursor between the masking layer and this black layer. So hold down the Option key and watch this cursor change to wanting to set a little clipping path or clipping mask. So what's happening here? Well, let's speed through and I will show you something. Give me just a moment here, guys. What I just did is I did a quick mid-level touch-up of Jenna's hair just to show you how this black layer helps out. So what we've got, believe it or not, when you start to get into these fine areas, you can't always tell, did you get those pixels? Are there pixels still in her hair that I still need to paint back in? Well, if you have this clipped off black layer on top, look, now you get a more clear picture of what's definitely there and what isn't there. So this one clearly tells me all these white pixels along here need to be painted back in. Now, how do I use this in practice? So the main thing to keep in mind is have the mask layer selected. You can turn this on, paint in this layer, so hit your B key to bring up the brush tool, and we need to shrink you down. So I'm hitting the left bracket again to bring her down. As long as I'm painting on this layer, and as you can see, I'm painting in black, so I need to hit the X key, flip that to white. Oh, looks like my flow is down here as well. So let's bring that up to 100%. So now as I paint that back in, the black layer is telling me I'm not missing a pixel. And I'll paint. And then I'll hit the X key to choose black so I can be painting out. I know this looks weird. I'm choosing a black brush, but it looks like I'm painting white. But black erases things and white preserves or brings back things. So now I've done a bit of a cleanup and I've kept this layer on the whole time. And as we click off of it or turn it off, you can now see, and it just is an assistance layer. You can turn it on, turn it off. If it makes no sense, play around with it. I promise you it will make life a little bit better. I have a script. I believe it or not, I do. I don't have a lot of time, but I have a script. Tip number 2. Mask with the mask layer off. I don't know what that means either. All right, so we're back to Jenna, and say the initial mask kind of really ripped out part of her hair, and I'm not 100% sure where the edge of it is anymore. Now, you can go in with your brush tool while you're on the mask layer, and you can blindly kind of go until you see it, but you can see here I'm painting in background. I'm not being very helpful. If you're trying to find the edge of something, a suit, someone's hairline, whatever it is, you don't have to just blindly guess. You can hold down the Shift key and tap on the layer mask. Now, it puts a big X through it, but it still allows you to paint as if it's active. So we can now see exactly where the edge is. So I've got my white brush chosen, and now I can paint along the edge. Look at that. You can't even see what I'm doing because it's invisible. But look at that. Once we go back and tap on this again, and you don't have to hold on the Shift this time, you now have the outer edge. So now it's far easier to just paint in the rest of her hair. Ta-da! So again, you're painting with the layer mask turned off, and it still works. So what do you want? Number 3, when to use paths. When to use paths. Here is a behind-the-scenes photo from the film that I was working on last year, The Remarkable Life of John Weld. Now, as you can see, if we wanted to remove this director and this camera operator and the objects they are working with, we can use basic masking techniques for a lot of it. Unfortunately, we will start getting into a lot of straight edges, in particular the camera equipment, these tripod legs. So what can we do? Let's turn on some of these layers. So there's our director, there's our camera operator. Yay. But for the camera, what I was able to do, and I can show you the ones that came out, is that I was able to make paths using the pen tool. All right, so say we just wanted to cut out one of these legs. So we use our pen tool. You know, I should be closer on this. Bong, bong, bong. And just say we didn't even need the lower half. It is supposed to be a quick tip after all. And say for whatever reason, this was the confines of what we wanted. Step 1, double click this work path and call it whatever you want. Now, you've got that chosen, and you've got the layer you're going to want to pull the mask from. You've got some options here. So down here, it says load the path as a selection. Now, what's good about this is that obviously this is a very hard edge, down to the pixel. If I just simply hit this and click on this, and then go to, there, add layer mask. Let's put the white back here so we can see it. We end up with a very sharp edge, but sometimes things aren't fully in focus. Some things, need a softer edge. You can control it. So if we go back and undo that, go back to the paths, choose whatever you want. Let's deselect. All right, so we've chosen the path. If you hold down the Alt Option key and then click on this, you get a pop-up window, and you can make this feather out a little bit. So if you need it to be just a little softer, let's go really soft for the purposes of our tutorial. We'll go 10 pixels. Now, it doesn't look like much happened here, but if you go back to add the layer mask, you get a very, very, very soft edge. But you can see the point here is that we have the path. The path gives us our straight lines or our curves, and then we can control how feathered they are on the mask layer. So ultimately, this allowed me, let's turn off these paths. So I basically did the same thing for the camera. I did the same thing for the megaphone. That allowed me then to, well, we don't need you anymore, and we can turn off the path, but allowed me to then successfully cut out the megaphone and the camera, as well as the two humans. Tip 4. How to bring back the old refine menu. I like the old refine menu. The select and mask one, it's getting better. When they first brought it out, it really didn't work too well on a lot of stuff that didn't have a very clean background. But I found out after a lot of searching how to bring up the old one. And if you're a fan of the old one, well, then we're just in our own special club, aren't we? Yes, we are. Our own special club. Yeah. Okay. This one's real simple. So here we are, back with Jenna again, and we are going to select the mask here. And then we are just simply going to go up, and now normally we would hit select and mask, but if you hold down the shift key and click on it, ta-da! Look at this. Instead of that whole window, we now have our old and familiar refined mask. So if you were a fan of the older refined mask and that helps you in your workflow, well then, there you go. You can still get it back. And tip number 5. A tip about hair. Hair is a hassle for a whole lot of reasons. But one thing that can help. If it turns out that you're bringing a character from a shot where the back of the hair has more shadow and then for whatever reason you need it to lighten up, the obvious thing here would be use the dodge tool, but again you want to work non-destructively. So how do you do that with hair? Here's what we can do. Let's add a new layer above this, and we are going to make sure that this arrow is showing up that shows that it is clipped and will only show up on the parts of the layer that the mask is revealing below. And let's fill this with 50% gray. So now we get this. Doesn't look that great. Let's see. So we're going to do this as hair lightener. Change here is that we're going to change this from normal blend mode to an overlay blend mode. Now the way overlay works is that any pixels that are lighter on the grayscale than 50% will start lightening the image, and anything darker than 50% will start darkening the image on that layer or below. But since we have filled this with 50% gray, there's nothing there. Let us start using the dodge and burn tools. In this case, we want to use the dodge tool, and I'm applying it only to the hair lightening. And look at this. Maybe I just simply need to bring the strength of this up. Now, of course, I'm doing this real strong for the purposes of the video. But what's nice, because we're doing this in this kind of fashion, we have it on its own separate layer. So let's turn that layer off. Let's just bring that layer on. And you can see we've done all this dodging work. All right, so we've zoomed out, and let's separate off these layers so that you can see the difference. Before and after, before and after, before and after, before and after. Blah, 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 blah. So that was 5. So I guess you think you're caught up. Well, guess what? There's a bonus tip too. Bonus tips. And really it's not too much of a bonus, but it is pointing out that I have done previous videos on layer masking, so I will indicate them here. One I did with a Scarlett Johansson photo a couple years ago, and then there's also a quick tip one, which is also indicated here, that will help you learn how to put masks on top of masks without having to apply the previous one, and then, just in case you need to go back, That's the big thing here. We want to make sure that you work in a way that you can always go back and fix should you change your mind, get new directions, all that good stuff. I would like to thank Alva's Music, of whose shirt I'm wearing right here. Just a recent discovery down in San Pedro. They have a combination of ballet, which is perfect for my wife, and guitar, which is perfect for our whole family. So if you're down in the San Pedro area in Los Angeles, I highly recommend giving them a shout out. Also, as you can see from the wall of stuff behind me, I'm introducing a new segment here, and that is going to be something called One from the Vaults. This is a TARDIS, for those of you who are unfamiliar with Doctor Who, but it is a wireless Bluetooth speaker, perfect for this environment here. I've been wanting a TARDIS of a good size for quite some time, and the thing that I am most happy about is that if I was going to get a TARDIS, you know, it could have been a cookie jar, it could have been anything, but if I got one this big, I wanted it to make authentic sounds. And sure enough, this thing, once I find the on switch, I just turned it off. And what I love best of all is that it's more than just a toy that sits and rots on a shelf. It actually plays my music when I'm working. So I am in love with this. It is made by Massive. And I found this in a store. And then I suddenly got a text message from my wife saying, do not buy anything while I was there. And it turns out she went out and found a much better deal of it on Amazon. So if you are a fan of all things Doctor Who and you do not yet have a TARDIS, this is a perfect addition. I don't remember how much it cost because I got it for Christmas, but Amazon apparently had a much better deal, so go for it. That is another video. If you have any other ideas of videos that I should work on, please comment below. Do not forget to like, subscribe. There's going to be so much more coming out this year, I promise. And thank you, and come again.